From the mind of Mark Yoshimoto Nemkov.
The Soyuz 1973 versus the Neumann BCM-104 broadcast condenser microphone shootout. Let's get it on. So these are broadcast condenser microphones, meaning they are purpose-built for broadcast. They are meant to have a broadcast lean sound, meant so that you can really talk on top of a music bed, and it won't interfere with what is going on behind the voice. Because in broadcast, you are often dealing with other elements than your voice, meaning that there's a music bed, maybe there's a song playing in the background, maybe you're actually announcing something and there's a crowd noise behind you. Which is why there's so much emphasis on the mid-range in these microphones and not so much on the bottom end. Because what happens is, if you have a big bottom end, right, and you drop that track on top of a music bed, there's only so far you can push the fader up on the voice track. Because that bottom end is going to influence the amount of total sound there is in the mix, right? So the more bottom end you have, the less headroom you have on your mix for the voice. But when you take that bottom end out, when you get this lean, really tight bottom end for broadcast, there's a lot more that you can push this voice up front. Now, I think that one thing you can notice right away is the Neumann BCM seems to be a little bit more snappier. It's a lot more polite. I wouldn't call it NPR, but it's really kind of NPR friendly. But it definitely seems to have a snappier transient response than the Soyuz 1973, which I would say has more of a musical transient response. It's a little bit thicker sounding. And I'm trying to, you know what? I actually, off the top of my head, it could be that the capsule in the BCM-104, I believe is the same exact capsule that Neumann put into their digital microphones. And I believe that those digital microphones were really created for capture, the most pristine capture of, like, let's say, orchestras that you could get, right? So you want a really accurate transient response. And I think how they achieve that, one of the ways they achieve that is the membrane, the tension on the capsule membrane is probably tighter than it is on, say, this microphone. This you can feel it has a little bit more relaxation. This feels a little bit more, right? It doesn't feel like it has as much sustain. So it's really immediate. They're definitely two different sounds, which really surprised me. I thought that they would sound much closer to each other. Now, they are, I would say they're really kind of in the same range. And the funny thing is that the Neumann BCM-104, this thing's been out for over 20 years, and it never really caught on, at least here in the United States, as a voiceover microphone or as a broadcast microphone. I think people use the 705 broadcast dynamic microphone from Neumann more than the this. And I think it's also because this is like an $1,100 microphone. This is really about the same price as a TLM-103. And this, of course, the Soyuz 1973, is a $799 US microphone. So you have a considerable price difference. So this is about 30% more. That's not really right. My math, please don't ask me to do math this early. So it's more money. But is it worth more? And I think that you definitely have a more polite sound here. I think that this is more like, if I'm doing news, right? This may be a more appropriate sound than this. This is more of like a DJ sound. This is a thicker, really more character. Yeah, it has more character for sure. It definitely feels a little bit thicker. You know, even though there's not that huge low-end presence, you definitely notice a low end, right? There is not a lack of low end. It's just the way that these microphones were designed. And that's a really important distinction because these are definitely birds of a different feather when you're talking about broadcast microphones. Now, you know what I'm going to do? Hold on. All right, so there was a promo, a concert promo that I did yesterday. And I tried out both of these microphones because of a specific reason. And that is because this concert promo, right, this is going to go on top. The music bed is not going to be instrumental. It's going to be a song, like a song with big heavy guitars and vocals. It's a heavy metal show. So it may have a high-pitched vocal in there. It may just have like really crunchy guitars, and all that is going to compete with the frequencies of my voice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to replicate the read that I did on each of these microphones. And I want you to notice something. This is actually really interesting. Something I noticed. So, and it's because that I think that the BCM-104 actually sounds a little bit different when you shout into it. So here we go. Steel Panther, live, January 29th at the Fillmore Charlotte. Tickets on sale now at livenation.com. Steel Panther at the Fillmore Charlotte on January 29th. Presented by Live Nation. Steel Panther, live, January 29th at the Fillmore Charlotte. Tickets on sale now at livenation.com. Steel Panther at the Fillmore Charlotte on January 29th. Presented by Live Nation. So, I definitely think that between the two, the BCM-104 is too polite for that. And this is more suited for something like that, something a little bit more aggressive. And I feel like the tonal difference, there is definitely a tonal difference, I feel, when you shout into the BCM-104. When you really get into it, right? I feel like you lose, I don't know, I feel like, it could be a factor of how tight the membrane tension is on this microphone. You know, it's meant to snap back, right, really fast so that it can capture every little nuance of your broadcast, voice delivery. And this is really a little bit more, I would say, you know what? I would say it's less modern, like less clean, but I think it's definitely full of character in comparison. So, what do you think? The Neumann BCM-104, it may be a little bit more detailed, and this one may have a little bit more mojo. Mojo is such a generic word when you're talking about sound, but you know what I mean. It might have a little bit more of that je ne sais quoi. All right, but what do you think? The Neumann BCM-104, the Soyuz 1973. Which one do you prefer? I kind of like them both. I think that in the general scheme of things, the ability to have something that's broadcast ready, and I know you can do this via EQ, but hold on. This is an important point. When you do stuff via EQ, right, you're often doing it after the fact, and with the assumption that you can get a certain sound. But, one thing that is very obvious when you start working with a lot of different microphones is not all microphones take EQ well. Some microphones fall apart under EQ. So you may record your broadcast-centric sound, right, on a different microphone, figuring, I'll cut the bottom end out. But sometimes you don't get the sound you want because you're not hearing the sound you need up front. And in order to do that, you need a purpose-built tool. So having these in my toolbox is really, I think, an essential part of really being able to cover all the bases. And even though they are different sounding microphones with different nuances between them, the more polite one and the more aggressive one, I'm glad to actually have this wide array of options in my toolbox for broadcast-ready sound. So, what do you think? Soyuz 1973? Neumann BCM-104. I want to know. Leave a comment. All right, everybody. Until next time, this is Mark Yoshimoto Nemkov, fading to black.